that time once again. We are all looking back at the best of what we heard over the year of 2024. Welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris. I always like to begin these end-of-year videos with a little look back over how the channel has gone this year. Skip to this point if you just want to get to the lists. So 2024, a lot changed for me this year. I changed day jobs again, but on the music side of things, I amazingly joined the team over at the website The Razor's Edge. I've been doing that since April of this year, and I've done so many incredible features with them already, getting early access to albums, going to Arctangent, and meeting so many awesome musicians, some of which have been musical heroes of mine. I'm very grateful to the Razor's Edge for bringing me into their ranks and for everything they've offered me so far. I also have another exciting development that I can't quite talk about yet, but hopefully in the new year I'll be able to talk about that more when it's more confirmed. Consequently though, it meant I had less time to dedicate to Crushing Sounds, so I decided to switch up our format to make less frequent but longer videos, hence the end of month videos that I did with Mike and Reuben. We didn't do every single month, but we did a fair few, and those did quite well, so they will likely continue next year. But also on a whim, I decided to shake up my review format. I got early access to Seeing Queen's album Hot Singles in Your Area for the Razor's Edge, and I had a lot of things I wanted to say, so I decided to make a more video essay style approach to it. It just fit the tone of what I needed to say about the album better than just my straight-to-camera approach. To say that that worked would be massively understating it. It almost instantly became our most watched video, and now sits way out in front at over 7,000 views. I cannot thank you all enough for that, and all the comments I got on the video, good and bad. It's just cool that people checked out what we're doing. We gained a bunch of new subs off the back of that video as well, so if you're watching this after having subscribed onto that video, thank you so much. Welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoy what we do. But also my favourite thing to do this year, our first ever Bloodstock vlog. I don't know what took us so long, but we finally vlogged Bloodstock Festival, and it was a blast, and I'm very happy with how that turned out, and I'm very happy that a lot of people seem to enjoy it. I was fortunate enough to nab myself a ticket for next year before they sold out, so expect me to do one of those again, and I'll just contribute to the meme here. If you know, you know. I'm of course a filthy influencer, so of course I got my ticket for free. I did much fewer interviews on the channel than previous years, mostly because a lot of my attention had to go on the Razor's Edge for the interview front, but I just want to quickly thank, as usual, the artists that did join Crushing Sounds this year for an interview. So Serena Cherry once again, Land Captains, Froglord, Atera, formerly Screaming Souls, Blade of Grass, and Reagan Ralph. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come on our channel and talk about your work. It means so much. So on the whole, not a lot of content this year, but what we did put out was really well received. Lots of awesome milestones and exciting new opportunities. Let's continue that into 2025. But now, what you're likely all here for, let's talk about our favourite albums of the year. I'm going to pass over to Reuben and then to Mike for the best albums of 2024.
Hey guys, Reuben here. It's that time of year again, and Chris has asked me to rattle off my top 10 metal albums of 2024. So first off, some honourable mentions. So my number 10 is Verses in Oath by Hulda. The Belgian-American black metal project run by the sole member, who only goes by the Inquisitor. And I got to see her and her amazing backing band at the Exchange in Bristol earlier this year. And what a show it was, and what an album. Just proving that there is still so much room to explore in traditional kind of Norwegian style black metal. Number 9, and I'm sure this is going to be very high on many people's lists, The Invincible Shield by Judas Priest. What can you say? If you like Priest, you'll like this album. It's just classic, straight up heavy metal goodness. So number 8 is an album by one of my favourite bands that have broken through in recent years, and it is Devoured by the Mouth of Hell by Harriet. It is oppressive and beautiful all at once. Debbie, Goff and company are firing on all cylinders on this thing, and I really can't wait to see them at Bloodstock next year. Number 7 is Bruce Dickinson with The Mandrake Project. Who'd have thought that an album where Bruce Dickinson, of all people, is trying his hand at, it feels like, as many different styles of metal he can, and it works really, really well. Definitely one of the most, I guess, diverse and unexpectedly interesting albums. I wasn't sure what I felt it was going to be like going in. Admittedly, I kind of thought, okay, this might be like Iron Maiden light. But no, he proves once again he can stand on his own 2 feet as a solo artist. Number 6 is the album that I think I had no idea about until I just saw it on a metal publication, and I thought, okay, I need to hear this. That is the self-titled album by the project I Am the Intimidator. Which is a kind of thrash metal-y album about the late Dale Earnhardt, considered one of the greatest racing drivers in NASCAR, and it is as silly as it sounds, yet it is still a fantastic tribute, and it is absolutely brilliant. Coming in at number 5, we have Dark Superstition by Gatecreeper. Whereas an album like An Unexpected Reality is very, very grindcore influenced, and you can hear that. This one, out of nowhere, is Melodeath, and you can really tell that they are wearing their influences on their sleeves with bands like At the Gates, early In Flames, and of course Heartwork era Carcass. It just ticks the right boxes. It feels like Gatecreeper, but it also feels like if you're into melodic death metal, then there's a lot to really enjoy here. So coming at number 4 is In Gravity by local legends Shrapnel. And it showcases everything that I like about modern prog metal, while also showing that there's a lot to be proud of if you're a part of this scene. Number 3 is Pirates 2 Armada by Visions of Atlantis. I'm not normally a symphonic metal guy, but this album blew me away. It's so good. It's consistent from start to finish. The songs on their own are all great. It's just an entertaining, great symphonic ride. Number two is admittedly a bit of a grower on me, despite being by my favourite band of all time. Of course, it is The Last Will and Testament by Opeth. Not every song is as memorable, and I don't necessarily see a lot of these becoming staples in Opeth's live sets. But as an album from start to finish, my God, this is the most consistent thing they've done in years. I think time will tell whether it's superior to In Corda Venenum, because that album was brilliant. It's arguably the most kind of consistent, well-paced, cohesive thing they've done since maybe like Still Life. Very good work. And at number one, which will not surprise many because it's the one album that everybody's talking about, and it's the one that I haven't mentioned yet. Yes, of course, it is Absolute Elsewhere by Blood Incantation. It is proggy, psychedelic, space, death, jazz stuff. If you like prog, if you like death metal, if you like both those things quite literally combined, with some like space rock stuff in there somewhere and like a Nile kind of aesthetic. Yeah, just absolutely mind-blowing, blew me away, and that is my album of the year. Absolute Elsewhere by Blood Incantation. Please, for the love of God, come to the UK for more than just one show. I get international touring is difficult, but Bloodstock, anyone from Bloodstock, if you're watching this, please get Blood Incantation at some point.
Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Mike, and today I'm going to be going through my top albums of 2024. I don't really know what came over me this year, but I made it my mission back in January to listen to as much new music as possible. The last few years I heard the odd new album here and there, but really for 2022 and 2023 especially, my top 5 albums were pretty much just the 5 new albums that I listened to that year. Now, don't get me wrong, I was still discovering new music all the time, but it was stuff that was new to me. It wasn't necessarily new releases from that year. This year, though, I decided that for whatever reason, I was going to make a conscious decision and effort to listen to as many new albums as I possibly could. I listened to probably up to 100 albums this year, which I know for a lot of people it's not that many. That's rookie numbers, according to a lot of people, but considering I sometimes have to work over 60 hours a week, and I got married in April this year, and my wife and I are expecting our first child in literally a matter of days, I think that's pretty good going. So without further ado, without further ado, here are my top 18, yes, 18 albums of 2024. So first up, as always, we do some honorable mentions. I'm just going to blitz through these really quick. These are all brilliant albums in their own right. You should definitely go check them out, but for whatever reason they didn't make it onto my my top 18. Getting into the main list, as it were, my top 18. There are a lot of bands in my list this year, which are bands that I knew of, but I'd never actually dived into their stuff before. This first band, however, and a couple more later on, as it turns out, is a band that I had never heard before diving into them this year. This first band is Heavy Temple, and this album is called Garden of Heathens. This album is an awesome blend of that kind of old school heavy metal, doom metal, with plenty of psychedelic rock and prog rock influences. There are some thunderous riffs which lay the basis for quite technical yet trippy guitar solos. The vocals weirdly at times almost remind me of indie style vocals, which I know sounds a bit odd, but I think it actually works here really well. I love the kind of doubling ping pong delay type effect that they have on the vocals. It really adds to the psychedelic vibes. The highlight of the album is definitely track 3, Divine Indiscretion. It utilises all of these elements that I've just talked about, going from thunderous doom to double-time old-school heavy metal to proggy stop-start moments to a really trippy psychedelic section. It's my first time listening to these guys, and I'm very, very impressed. Next up, at number 17, is Voidkind by Dune, with a V. The combination of sludge and prog has kind of been going hand in hand for quite some time now. Mastodons were the kings of that style, back with Leviathan and Blood Mountain. But Dune, in my opinion, at least, are leading the style today in the underground. I discovered them a few years back now, and I feel this may be their best album to date. The combination of vocal styles is something I always really, really like, so I love their use of going back and forth between harsh vocals and clean vocals in this album. The guitar tones are absolutely savage. The scope of some of these arrangements is staggering. Track 8, Abode of the Perfect Soul, is so good. My jaw hit the floor when I heard it kick in for the first time. They seem to get quite a bit of press off the back of this album, so I really hope we're going to see more of them going forward. Now for something completely different, my number 16 is Spirits by Romavus. Romulus Remus, however you want to pronounce it. This is another band that before discovering their new release of the year, I had never heard of them before, and I just got completely lost in this album. I love pagan themes in a lot of the media that I consume, whether it's video games, books, or music. So this album was basically a guaranteed slam dunk for me. It's like if Heilung introduced electric guitars, and instead of summoning demons, we were summoning spirits. That tribalistic drumming and the way the backing vocals are, almost used in a percussive way to keep time, is so good. And when the guitars do kick in, it's absolutely epic. I completely understand this kind of music is not for everyone, but to me it's the kind of music that I can just stick on whenever I want and let it transport me to some woodland in Scandinavia. If you think Heilung are a bit too intense, give this album a listen. It's a bit more accessible than Heilung, and that's not to discredit anything that Heilung or Romavus do. I love both of these bands. This album is well worth your time. Stick it on, lie back, in bed, or on the sofa, see where it takes you. Right, now for some heavy shit. My number 15 is Helfenlich by The Infernal Sea. I discovered this band back at Bloodstock 2017. I loved them then. I love them on this new album. It's straight up black metal, very akin to Darkthrone, who also released an album this year, and despite what Chris and Reuben might say, I really enjoy that album. It's not on this list, because I prefer Hellfenlick. This album isn't all just blast beats and screams. Tracks like Witchfinder demonstrate their skills at mid-tempo black metal stompers, and Black Witchery is a punk black metal hybrid that gets me going like a child in a sweet shop, except that child is actually a guy in corpse paint, and that sweet shop is actually a church. This album was released right back in January, and it's been able to remain on my rotation throughout the year, and is well worth checking out if you haven't already. They are also fantastic live, so go and see them if you ever get the chance. Following on with some more black metal, at number 14 we have De Republica by Griffon.
Thus ever for tyrants.
I saw a song from this album released ahead of the full album's release on the Black Metal Promotion YouTube channel, which is a great channel, by the way. I loved it so much, I immediately pre-ordered the vinyl. The song I heard was the album opener, which is phenomenal, but the rest of the album is just as good. This is much more of an epic style black metal, much more melodic style black metal as well that you're going to get from like Hellfenlick. The song arrangements are far more sprawling, far more focused on making a big impact and big, heavy moments as opposed to just blast beating the entire time. Track 2, The Ides of March, has one of the best starts to a blast beat I think I've ever heard. That clean low guitar with the sharpening of knives in the background, ending with the words, "Thus ever for tyrants," and then launching into a barrage of blast beats, tremolo guitars, and a long drawn-out fry scream is absolute perfection. The album, to me, seems to be about the power of governments and also the power of revolution and the desire for change, and I think thematically it's arranged really, really well, and the music fits that concept brilliantly. Right, number 13. I don't know about you, but I find one of the most frustrating opinions to have on an album is indifference. Albums you neither love nor hate. For my number 13, this was how I originally felt about this album, which annoyed me because I kept thinking on paper I should love this. I put it down to the fact that I probably just wasn't in the right headspace at the time, because I listened to it for a second time months later and absolutely loved it. It's Battle Ballads by Tyr. The kings of epic, well, one of the kings of epic folk metal. I don't know what was wrong with me at the time when I first heard it. It did nothing for me when it first came out, but that opinion has now completely changed. The sing-along vocals is classic Tyr, and the melodies are extremely uplifting and epic. I love the nods to classic metal in the instrumentation, and the production is, of course, brilliant. Track 4, Row, may well be their application to be lead support for a monomath, and if that were to happen, I'd certainly make the trip. Okay, so please don't hate me when you hear what my number 12 is. Most people will probably have this near the top, if not their number 1 album of the year. I believe Metal Hammer have put it as their album of the year. That's right, my number 12 is Absolute Everywhere by Blood Incantation. This is a truly unique listening experience. I'm not going to dwell too long on it because I'm sure it's going to be in Chris's top 10, and I'm sure as hell it's going to be in Reuben's top 5. Everything that needs to be said about this album has already been said, but I from my money, I love the combination of the Pink Floyd style space rock with the old school death metal style. It just works. I love it how the band have clearly just gone fuck it and completely ran with the idea. Props to this band for doing it, and it truly deserves the praise that it's getting from everywhere. So we've had black metal, we've had melodic black metal. Let's talk about some atmospheric black metal. With my number 11 album of the year, of course, The Imperious Horizon by Winter Filleth. Winter Filleth, one of my all-time favourite black metal bands, so I am a bit biased here, but I don't care. I love this album so much. Yes, it's more or less what you'd expect from Winter Filleth, but I can't complain because that's what I love, and I love what they do. Like Brimming Fire kicks off the feels right away with amazing tremolo guitars and luscious keyboards in the background to create such a rich and thick arrangement. It's classic Winter Filleth sound. It always gives me chills, and this album basically just gives me more of what I love. There is one curveball in the album, though. To the Edge of Tyranny is much more of a straightforward black metal track, which was kind of jarring the first time I heard it, but over time, I've actually really grown to like it. They've been able to take this classic black metal style and inject so much of their Winter Filleth sound into it, and it just works so well. If you're a fan of black metal in any form and you've not heard Winter Filleth yet, make sure you fix that, and this album is certainly a good starting point in my opinion. My number 10 album of the year for me is the death metal album of the year. Blood Incantation may have been more ambitious, it certainly is more ambitious, but I just simply prefer the sound of Dark Superstition by Gatecreeper. This band have been leading the charge of playing that kind of chainsaw tone old school death metal for quite a while now, and playing it in the modern era, as it were. The album showcases a slightly more melodic style to the band. It's actually very melodic for them. I know the word melodic is a dirty word in the death metal scene, but it's here, it's in this album, and come on, we're not talking about them changing to a completely melodic death metal style here. It's still very much a heavy as fuck Gatecreeper death metal album. Tracks like Caught in the Treads prove that. I respect the band for evolving their sound just enough to keep it fresh, while still being able to create that thunderous, earth-shattering death metal that they are known for. Gatecreeper, Dark Superstition, go and listen to it. It's my favourite death metal album of the year, easily. My number 9 is from a band that I've known about for years, but I've never really taken the time to check them out before. I had no idea what to expect, but it clicked with me pretty much instantly, and it's Never Neverland by Unto Others. I have no idea what the rest of the band's discography is like, and therefore have no idea if this is considered a good album for them, but I really enjoyed it from the first listen. It's like a brilliant blending of goth, punk, hard rock, old school heavy metal. The opening track, Butterfly, is a gothic emotional time, whilst track 2, Mama Likes the Doors Closed, is borderline crossover thrash. Honestly, it's like if Typo Negative, the Ramones, and the Misfits started jamming together, and it just works so well. Speaking of the Ramones, there's a rather excellent cover of Pet Sematary on here, and the Unto Others sound works perfectly with that song. I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this album or band, and I certainly wasn't expecting this many styles and sounds from just one album, but it didn't feel misguided in any way. It was also an album that my wife really enjoyed. She's had to deal with listening to a lot of metal this year, so the fact that she came away actually really enjoying this, I think, has to give it bonus points. Hype. Extravagant or intense publicity or promotion. Promote or publicise a product or idea intensively, often exaggerating its benefits. Time 2 by Winter Sun. No, you probably knew this was coming. Seeing as I didn't get around to actually reviewing this thing when it came out, it's going to be very hard for me not to go on a big tangent here. Fans have been waiting for this album for years, to the point where I'm sure many people had already made up their minds about Time 2 before it was even released. I became a huge Winter Sun fan in about 2017, so I certainly haven't been waiting as long as others for this album. But even I was slightly disappointed with the end result. With repeated listens, I have found many, many things that I like about this album. I think The Way of the Fire is epic. I think One with the Shadows is a great change of pace for Winter Sun in terms of songwriting, and Silver Leaves does have many very emotional hooks in it. The one thing holding this album back from being higher is the production. It is far from the worst thing I've ever heard. It's not a terrible sounding album, but considering the production was why this album was delayed and shelved in the first place, it's almost inexcusable for the mix to be the way it is. The vocals at times are buried. The drums, especially when there's blast beats, sound so compressed and so overpowering, and the hundreds upon hundreds of orchestration that Yari was bragging about barely have room in the mix to breathe. But this is probably the most played album for me across the entire year. I love Winter Sun's music. That final chorus of Wailing the Fire is so amazing, it gives me goosebumps. I'm just at least happy now that Yari can hopefully put this behind him and carry on making more music. It's rough around the edges, but it's still left a big impact on me. Winter Sun, Time 2, my number 8 album of the year. Moving swiftly on, this has gone on for a bit. My number 7, a musical project I'm sure 2 of you have heard before. I certainly hadn't heard of them before this year. It's Ard with the album Untouched by Fire. Picture this. Take the monk chant vocals from Winter Phillip and place them over the top of melodic doom metal. The sole member of Ard, as it turns out, is in Winter Phillip, so the similarities are kind of expected. The album is fantastic, it's haunting, it's beautiful, it's emotional. The arrangements are so rich and epic. The monk-style clean vocals are some of the best clean vocals around, and I will die on that hill. I love checking out an album at random and falling in love with it. Go and listen to this album. It's so, so good. Number 6 on my list is probably one of the most important bands in the genre that we all call heavy metal. A lot of bands on this list, and most lists, would not be here if not for them. Of course, I'm talking about Invincible Shield by Judas fucking Priest.
You were in my grasp, head behind your veil, but out of guilt and denial. I have endured trial by fire.
These heavy metal gods are an absolute roll these days. This and Firepower are 2 of the best albums in their modern era. Invincible Shield is balls to the wall, classic heavy metal, no ambitions, no need to make a really expansive and overblown album. It's just Judas Priest kicking ass. Andy Sneap is a genius, and I think one of the key reasons as to why this album hits so hard. He's able to make these aging metalheads sound like they are still in their Painkiller era. I have the biggest grin on my face every time I go back to this album. Who knows if this will be their final contribution to the heavy metal world, but if it is, I think Judas Priest have done themselves and the entire heavy metal community proud. From here, these top 5 albums have all swapped places throughout the year. Each of them spent time at number 1, so please bear that in mind. These next albums are all brilliant. I can't exactly remember what was the first album I heard this year, but I know for sure this was definitely one of them. My number 5, funnily enough, Lucifer 5 by Lucifer. This came out right at the beginning of the year, and when I heard it, I immediately knew it was going to be one of my favourites. The album is a great nod to classic heavy metal with a heavy sprinkle of that kind of occult style heavy metal. It's full of old school heavy metal doom-like riffs with some catchy choruses. It's some of the catchiest choruses I've heard in a very long time. Joanna is a brilliant vocalist, and tracks like At the Mortuary and Riding Reaper are some of my favourite tracks from the entire year. Also, this is a small thing, but listen to that drum fill at the beginning of Immaculate Heart. The drums are amazing in this album. It's that proper dead 70s sound, which just suits the style of this album perfectly. God, go listen to it. Number 4 is the last of my new discoveries that I made this year, and it's the one that probably blew me away the most. It came out all the way back in February, and has been regularly played on my Spotify ever since. My number 4 is The Fallen Leaves by Dwaro Delph. If I was to hide away in a cave, away from civilization, with the means of still being able to make music, this is probably the kind of thing I would make. It's got elements of epic, atmospheric black metal, death metal, and dungeon synth, and it's all written and performed by one bloke. Also, a lot of music is about Tolkien, so that's me sold straight away. All the songs here are amazing, but the track This Shattered World hits me in all the feels. The delivery of the lines From Beyond, The Veil of Death Awaits No More is so powerful, and it sums up why I love this album so much. The dungeon synth elements are a nice touch, which I think gives the album a little bit of a unique spin. It would have been so easy for him to just have synth at the beginning and then play black metal for the rest of it, but he was able to incorporate heavier sections with dungeon synth. I think it works really well. It's a stunning album. I'm so glad I discovered it. My number 3 album of the year is one that's grown on me exponentially since its release. I was at first indifferent to this album. I enjoyed it a lot, for sure, but I wasn't blown away at first. Now, I love it so much, and I found myself going back to it constantly throughout the year to listen to it over and over and over and over again. It's Phantoma by Unleash the Archers. All of my initial criticisms of the album have gone. I now even like the inclusion of the slower opening track, Human Era, as the setup for the album. Every song here is a banger. The title track, Buried in Code, Gods in Decay, they're all fast and epic. Green in Glass is catchy as anything. Give It Up or Give It All is like a 70s hard rock ballad, and I absolutely love it. I think it's also pretty well known at this point. These are some of the best vocals you're going to get on a power metal album ever. Brittany slays, quite literally slays. She's genuinely one of the best vocalists in metal, male or female. She's absolutely phenomenal. She's fucking badass. Unleash the Archers are a band I've known about for a long time, and I know a handful of their songs, but this was the first time I've actually sat through one of their albums all the way through. If the rest of their catalogue is as good as this, I will definitely be diving into their back catalogue. So you can probably work out by now that I love epic music, and I'm afraid my top 2 albums are no different. These two have swapped places a lot, but how I've settled it today, I'm pretty happy with. So we'll go with it. My number 2, the kings of epic folk. Come on, it's Enter Theorem, Winter Storm. Interferum's last album, Thalassic, was my album of the year that came out, and one of the main reasons for that was their new keyboard/clean vocalist. He is absolutely phenomenal. I was so excited to see that this album featured the exact same lineup as Thalassic. Winter Storm is an incredible display of catchy, epic folk metal from one of the most important bands in the scene. This album has incredible pacing, kicking off with the blistering Winter Storm Vigilantis into the more mid-tempo Long and Cold Winter of Sorrow and Strife, which sets us up for Fatherland, one of the most rousing call to arms songs I've ever heard. The inclusion of Madeline Ligistam from Elaine as lead vocalist for the track Scars in My Heart is brilliant. Her voice suits Interferum perfectly, and rounding up the album with the epic From Order to Chaos into the Balls Out Victorious is a fantastic way to end the album. Interferum seem to have really found a setup that works for them on these last 2 albums, and I really hope this momentum keeps going because I love what they're doing right now. So, my number 1 album. I'm not going to do a big build up here. You know my number 1 album is Brothers of Metal, Thimble Winter. I've been hyped about this album since the band randomly dropped The Other Son of Odin and Berserker a couple years ago. It felt like we were waiting ages for the new album, but they finally announced it, and unsurprisingly, I immediately pre-ordered the vinyl and heard it day 1. I've been obsessed with this band for 4 years, so I really, really, really wanted this album to be good. Well, I can safely say I have not stopped listening to it since it came out. Okay, Heavy Metal Viking can get in the bin and stay off this album, but the rest of it is amazing. The first line of vocals of Flight of the Ravens is the greatest metal moment of the year. Heart of Stone has some of the most over-the-top but incredible performance from male vocalist Joachim. Rivers of Gold, Blood Red Sky see the band try their hand at more folky sea shanty style stuff, and Nanya's Fate is one of my favourite power ballads of the year. Easily. This album's best quality, though, which is the same with all their albums, and one of the reasons I absolutely love this band, is how powerful and epic their choruses are allowed to be. They are able to be so catchy, whilst at the same time be far heavier than your average power metal band. I am so happy that this album turned out the way that it did. The feeling I had when I heard this album on day 1, it was incredible. It's how I wanted to feel the first time I heard Time 2 on day 1. Brothers of Metal are becoming one of my all-time favourite bands, and this album further cements that. Costume change and lighting change. Sorry, my wife entered the flat as I was filming that last bit, so I wrapped it up very quickly there. But yeah, just wanted to say this has been an amazing year for heavy metal, and for me, I've discovered so many amazing bands and amazing albums this year, but of course my favourite, it was Brothers of Metal, Thimble Winter. I mean, what can I say? I'm a predictable old fucker. But thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see what 2025 has in store for us. Keep listening to heavy metal, and I'll see you soon.
So I've already had to submit my list of favourite albums to Razor's Edge. Hopefully you haven't seen it. That being said, there is a slight difference to the final list. I couldn't include EPs on that list. However, there's one that I really wanted to include here, so we'll get to that one. I might not have done a lot of videos for Crushing Sounds this year, but I listened to so much music, more than I ever have any other year by far. So I had a lot of stuff that I had to leave off, making this by far the hardest list I've ever done for this channel. So for the first time, this isn't a top 10, it's a top 20. Here are a few honourable mentions that were this close to making the list proper. Even with the honourable mentions, I could have gone on for ages, but I had to call it at some point or we'd be here all day. So with that, let's get to the top 20 albums of 2024. Let's just get this out of the way now. Is this album as good as 2020's Abyss? No, but that album was absolute perfection. I was worried when I got to listen to Phantomer ahead of its release that people might dismiss it as not being as good as the album that came before, because Phantomer is still got some amazing moments on it. The title track, Ghost in the Mist, Gods in Decay, Green and Glass, it's all great stuff. It still has all the trademarks that make Unleash the Archers great, with awesome guitar work and epic vocals. Phantomer is just a great time. There are a few bands that are able to juggle light and darkness as well as swallow the sun. These guys rarely ever miss for me, and Shining is just another amazing experience. From beginning to end, you get incredible atmosphere, rich emotion, and a great array of vocal prowess with sections that are, dare I say it, catchy. Awesome work yet again. One of the big surprises of the year for me that came out of nowhere, Mike discovered this one on one of our Albums of the Month videos, and I knew I had to go check out Griffon as soon as we were done. It's brutal, epic black metal from France that has great tone, it's weighty, sounds evil as hell, and I'll never get enough of the intro to the track Ides of March. I have a hunch Mike has already brought that up in his list, but the rest of the package is also just jaw-droppingly good. Amazing black metal band if that's your thing. I've been shouting about this band since I first saw them at Bloodstock in 2021, and at long last, we have Tribe of Ghosts' debut album, City. It showcases why this band deserve all the attention right now. Loud, dystopic, weighty heavy metal. This band have come out swinging and have the potential to be huge. If you want to hear some awesome modern metal that takes advantage of modern production and sounds, not being low attention span nonsense like the new Bring Me the Horizon album, go listen to City by Tribe of Ghosts. I make no apologies for how often I bring up this band as well. Another smaller band you need to check out if you haven't done so already. Moon Reaper have at last released some music with their current iteration. I loved them before, but pairing Morgan's vocals with Sheeran's vocals was a genius move and gives Black Sun Sorcery a lot more dynamics than the band have ever had before. Heavy as balls with cosmic level scope. This is the best EP I heard this year, by far. You'll see them on the main stage at Bloodstock before long, I guarantee it. Long may this band continue. I was certainly not expecting Gallia to take me by surprise this year. Obviously, I knew they are excellent, but they really exceeded themselves on Coma. Slipping into some moments of actual melody amongst the skull-crushing heaviness made this album flow together so seamlessly. It felt like the band took the risk to evolve themselves once again, and if they keep doing that with each new release, we'll have one of the greats of extreme metal. I won't lie, I was a bit concerned when I heard Oceans of Slumber had another album coming out. After their flawless self-titled album, I think released back in 2020, they decided to do an opeth and go for a much more mellow, somber and reserved album as the follow-up. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but their albums Starlight and Ash did very little for me, to be honest. So I thought we might be getting more of that. Instead, we got the band's heaviest album to date. Oceans of Slumber have pushed themselves even further with Where Gods Fear to Speak, with Cammy Beverley's masterful vocals being beautiful and heavy at the same time. Good to have these guys back to doing what they do best. More of this, please. One of the most entertaining power metal bands going right now. We were eagerly awaiting the next Brothers of Metal album after how amazing Endless Saga was. Fimbulvinter saw the band try a few more ideas alongside their epic power metal. It didn't always work. I'm not a fan of heavy metal Viking, but Rivers of Gold, Blood Red Sky, those are top-notch new tracks, new ideas for this band. But you also have the signature Brothers of Metal awesomeness with tracks like Giant Slayer. 3 for 3 with awesome albums from this band, and I need more. Another one that sort of just appeared out of nowhere for me, Dune's Voidkind was so mesmerizing from the first listen. You can see a common trend in a lot of my favourite albums. I love bands that juggle different vocal styles really, really well, and that is definitely the case with Dune's new album. Every brutal section successfully pounds you around the head, but the moving cleans succeed in giving it so much emotional weight. Its hour-long runtime flies by, and they were awesome this year when I got to see them live.
Fight and begin with the mysteries beyond finding.
I had never heard of this band when I saw their name on a list of releases. I thought, Necrowretch is an awesome name, let's give it a go. And man, one of the best black metal albums I heard this year. Nothing too flashy, just simple yet brilliant black metal of the highest caliber. If you haven't heard Necrowretch or their new album Sorda de Hal, go fix that. I love post-rock and post-metal, so, I mean, come on, it's Alcest. Of course they were going to be in the top 10. The defining band of the post-metal movement. It's impossible to not just lose yourself on Les Chantés de l'Oreille. Excuse my French. So much of my favourite traits from this subgenre came from this band, and they continued to deliver with every single release. I know some people weren't too keen on the opening track. I liked it. I liked the whole thing. One of the most revered bands in this corner of metal for a reason, and they continue to prove it here. I know there will be many people who think that Judas Priest are simply going to appear high up on people's lists for the legacy and not the music. While that does occasionally happen, don't get me wrong, why on earth did Metallica's 72 Seasons top so many lists with that fucking rubbish album? But that isn't the case here with Judas Priest and their new album Invincible Shield. It's fantastic. From the opening track, Panic Attack, this album is just non-stop brilliance, full of fire and fury, and everything that heavy metal is in its purest sense. These legends are showing us exactly how it should be done. Age has not slowed them down, and Judas Priest still know how to make fucking heavy metal, and putting a lot of their contemporaries to shame.
But nothing kills the strength like a loss of sight. Untethered, weightless, free falling, aimless. Distance between the soul and death is gone. Time blind us endless, pulled into orbit. In gravity, you'll break off into run.
I can't put into words just how heavy and catchy this album is in equal measure. It's been a good year for vocals, if you ask me, and Shrapnel are right up there with their new album In Gravity. Every track has a moment where your hair just stands on end. It's so epic. I don't do Song of the Year, but the title track would certainly be high up on that list. Cannot wait to see this band play Bloodstock in 2025. They're going to absolutely blow everyone away.
These days I'm quiet. You make me still. My head fills up with words. I bend to your will, and you're just
Julie Christmas's first album since 2011. I bet there was a lot of anticipation for the release of this one. This was the first album I'd heard from her, and I fell in love with it instantly. Incredible post-rock with gaze elements in there as well, with powerhouse vocal delivery. Ridiculous and Full of Blood was a sonic assault on the ears, but in the best way possible that only post and noise bands are able to achieve. I try not to let external factors influence my lists, but I did get to meet Julie at Arctangent, and she was incredible to talk to, a fascinating and fiercely passionate artist. I can't wait to dive into more of her work.
compassion turn foe into friend. May self-awareness help us transcend. May forgiveness be given despite lives that were lost. For isn't it peace all of us?
This is going to be the one I have to fight for, isn't it? Is this a metal album? No, probably not, but fuck it, it got reviewed in the Razor's Edge and Distorted Sound, so screw it, it fits in my book. Go make your own list. Kalandra's Frame of Mind was by far the most moving album I heard all year, maybe even the last few years. A wonderful, sincere, serene, an emotional outpouring that sums up the state of the world that it currently is in a way that metal, for all of its strengths, can't do. I adore metal and everything about the fire and the passion and the fury, but I can also recognize when something tackles deep topics from the other end of the musical spectrum, with sincerity and calmness and incredible attention to the tiny soft moments of music.
Silent screams inside my head like a radio. I can hear the silent voices in stereo. Turn the music louder, why won't you let me know? Like a radio in stereo. I feel my shadows constantly watching.
If you haven't heard this album, you haven't watched my channel before, so hello. The last video I made before this was talking about how much I loved following the release of Ankor's new album Shogunai. Over the last 2 years, the band have been releasing each track from this mini album with an accompanying music video, all telling one big complete story. It was very, very cool to follow, but musically, it also really works. It's the modern interpretation of metalcore, but done better than anyone else. The band's passion for making this more than just a standard album release inspired me to no end, and to have the best metalcore album of the year at the end of it makes it even better. I don't think I've ever been a part of a fan base as desperate for a new album as this one. Where were you when Opeth dropped their first song with harsh vocals since the album Watershed? Opeth set up some mighty big expectations with this one, and then dropped by far their most ambitious album of their entire career. Yes, the gutturals are back, but they are joined by the band's newer era prog sound with trippy and wacky musicality and haunting aesthetics. Opeth are my favourite band of all time, you all know this. I've been one of those frustrated fans trying to convince people that their latter era is still as amazing as the classic era, despite the lack of metal in their sound. They never stopped being amazing, they just went to be amazing at something different. The Last Will and Testament is all of Opeth. All eras, all together, all amazing, all being amazing together. Even with the odd pacing issues here and there, this will be remembered as a milestone for this band and perhaps the dawning of a new era for them. It may be divisive amongst some of the fan discussions I've seen, but it will be talked about for some time to come. What else can I say about this album? Blood Incantation's Absolute Elsewhere has been regarded all over the metal world as the best of 2024. It's not hard at all to see why. An epic sci-fi scope that's all too easy to call Pink Floyd but extreme. It's a comparison that's apt, to be fair. The feeling I had when I listened to this thing was very similar to the first time I'd heard Dark Side of the Moon. Just that feeling of weightlessness and awe. And I don't even take drugs, but this band are so much more than just a fun prog experiment. No one was surprised by how amazing this turned out, because this band are always on top form with all of their releases. Here's hoping that Blood Incantation has now appeared on the radar for the more mainstream metal presses, so that this band can continue to blow people's minds. But there were 2 albums that, for me, just hit even deeper, starting with... A prog metal band coming out of China, have been criminally overlooked for best lists this year with their album Frailty. They bring the awesome hallmarks of genty riffing and mad time signatures, but where this album just dominates is in its atmosphere and its vocals. The The way they layer their vocals is so intriguing, and I could listen to the loops that they create for hours on end. They are so enchanting. Devin Townsend produces this album and features on one of the songs. However, I do wonder if he had a hand in the construction of the music, because many parts of this sound like his album Empath, which works for me, because that's one of my favourite albums ever. If you haven't heard this album or this band yet, I implore you to do so. It's magnificent stuff. One that probably also flew under the radar for a lot of people, Sawdusk, with their second album Antithesis, is my favourite album of 2024. If you don't know, it's hard to describe. It's dark folk with black metal and post thrown in. Antithesis takes the listener through so many different emotions and styles, beginning with some epic black metal on Verdalit, before bringing you right back down with the hauntingly beautiful Crowns of Esper. But then the album keeps taking you back and forth, chilling and heavy black metal, or serene yet dark folk, provided in equal measure and all done with full commitment and attention to the overall aesthetic. This back and forth could so easily have been jarring or inconsistent, but on Antithesis, it's anything but that. With such a strong identity and sense of atmosphere, they could have made anything fit within this work of art. Folk-inspired black metal has become something of a beloved subgenre for myself, so to have all the aspects of folk, black metal, post, and display those sounds across a huge spectrum of intensity, Antithesis has everything that I love all in one album. It may not be the heaviest sounding album that I heard this year, but in terms of its emotional and thematic weight, it's by far the heaviest thing I heard this year. So there you have it, our favourite albums of 2024. Thank you so much again for such an amazing year for the channel. If you found us this year, thank you so much for checking us out and potentially sticking around. If you've been with us for a while, you're the best. You have no idea how much that means to us. Thanks to the bands again that featured on the channel. Plenty more of that to come in the new year, I can assure you. I hope you all had a great holiday season, whatever you celebrate, and have a great end of 2024. We'll see you in 2025 for some more amazing heavy metal. But until next time, I've been Chris. Thank you all for watching. Go listen to some amazing heavy metal, and we'll see you in the next video.